Welcome to Rubber Chicken with a Podcast in the Middle, the internet's only podcast exclusively devoted to the Monkey Island series of adventure games. I'm Alistair.
I'm Gordon.
And this week we're going to give our final predictions and anticipations about the return to Monkey Island, coming to you on 19th of September 2022.
As of recording, 5 days away.
Yeah, it's getting close.
Oh yes, it's all coming down to this.
The moment we've been waiting for 30 years. To
Yes.
play the game that Ron Gilbert has been planning for 2 years.
He's been mulling it over all that time.
Definitely. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But before we begin, let's talk about Monkey Island Monday, the last Monkey Island Monday of all time. Brought to us by Dave Grossman earlier this week.
Yes, Dave Grossman's Twitter feed going to drop off in interest immediately come Monday.
He never got quite as much attention as Ron. I think they should have had anything that was remotely controversial. They should have put it out through Dave's Twitter feed.
So he could cop the hate.
Well, no one would have noticed because he's just
right.
doesn't have that level of exposure, right?
It's not the same profile.
So in Monkey Island Monday, we saw Guybrush meeting the pirate leaders.
Yeah. Well, they were the pirates.
Yeah, the old hot pirate leaders standing in the spot where the men of low moral fibre used to stand. And there was a little joke, both in the mouse over, they were called the men of low moral fibre, parentheses pirates.
Yeah.
Because that's who Guybrush thought they were until he spoke to them. And they said, as we predicted, they weren't the pirate leaders anymore.
Nope.
Nothing too surprising came out in this final Monkey Island Monday. They said, we're not the pirate leaders anymore, and you never actually finished the 3 trials. But never mind.
Yeah. What are your reflections on this scene?
It's kind of the fact that Guybrush never really finished the 3 trials. It's like, it's fun when you don't draw attention to it, when it's just something to notice as part of the structure of the story. I don't need it to be spelled out to me by a character in-game.
No, it feels a little inward gazing. It feels a bit like when Stan's jacket becomes a game object.
Yeah, Tales of Monkey Island making Stan's jacket this inexplicable thing that freaks out the senses. Yeah, don't need that kind of stuff.
No. But yeah, okay, we've seen a lot of Melee Island. I'm kind of looking forward to not seeing Melee Island.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. Yeah, it's fine to go back, but what's new? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, and we'll probably talk about that more later on in the episode when we talk about our thoughts and feelings and speculations on what's to come.
Yeah.
There were a couple of other pieces of news that I wanted to talk about. You mentioned the Gamers Global interview with Ron and Dave last week, but I hadn't read it yet. But I did immediately after recording. The only thing that came up from that I thought was interesting was they talked about, as you mentioned, Guybrush and Elaine being married.
Yeah.
And Ron said they are still married in return, because we thought maybe they wouldn't be, or something like that.
No. Yeah, but they are.
He said they are, and he said he and Dave talked about, maybe they got divorced or something, but they just thought, nah, the fans like them being married, we'll just leave it.
Yeah, I doubt it's going to be laboured.
Yeah, I get the impression that regardless of whether they're married or not, I don't think Guybrush and Elaine's relationship is going to be very important to the story in this game.
No, I also hope it's not.
Yeah, I'm not getting that impression from anything that I've seen. That's fine with me.
Yeah, me too.
There was another interview with Ron and Dave that I will leave the link for from Shacknews, but it was pretty much
Shack-Fu.
It was also Shack-Fu. It was pretty much everything that we heard before. Starts where revenge ends. There's a weird transition. Ron and Dave said it was good working together again. Stuff like that. Nothing too mind-blowing.
Well, it's all wrapping up this stuff, right?
Yeah. So close to the end. I guess there'll be more once the game's out and there's more to talk about in terms of the story and that kind of thing, maybe.
There's going to be tons to talk about for a dedicated podcast, I think.
For a dedicated podcast, yes. And for interviews with Ron and Dave, you'd assume there'll be a little bit more as well. Ron did say that originally, for a long time, he didn't think of Monkey Island as a big deal, and it wasn't until he started Grumpy Gamer and people started coming to his blog and commenting about how much they love Monkey Island and stuff.
Yeah.
That it really hit him how much those games had resonated with people.
Yeah, it means a lot to people, to a small community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was that scrapbook video that Dom Armato narrated as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like the development trailer.
Yeah, and he just said there's an in-game scrapbook that can catch you up on the events of the previous games.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what that's all about.
Yeah, and there were very brief clips from all 5 games shown in that trailer, so...
This sounds like the kind of thing to me is going to be available in hard format when they do the $6,000 physical release.
Yeah, but like not entirely correctly formatted or copy edited or proofread limited run games release, where you get a copy of Return on a broken USB stick and a piece of plastic horse armor.
Yes. Yeah, that kind of thing.
I think that a lot of this stuff is so that people don't think that Curse, Escape, and Tails, especially Escape and Tails, are being ignored. That's the impression that I get, to reassure people.
Yeah, you don't want to alienate these fans. I hear very few people who say, oh, Escape was my first game.
Yeah, I don't think people are worried about Escape dropping off the storyline, but I think there is a certain level of fondness for Tails. So...
Yeah. And we should go easy on Tails.
Yeah, it has its fans. So
it does.
Yeah, I think that just seemed to be there to clue people in about that, and maybe this we'll talk about what we think the relationship between Return and the rest of the series is going to be in the sort of broader part of this episode's discussion, if you're happy for us to move on to that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to talk about a couple of things, basically. Do we have any final thoughts, guesses about what's going to happen in the game, and what are our general thoughts and feelings before it comes out? So which do you want to begin with? Predictions or emotions?
I think predictions first.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to start?
Yeah, well, I sent you my prediction of what I think the plot is going to be, right?
Yeah.
I reckon we know Guybrush goes back to Melee. He's trying to get an expedition together to go find the secret of Monkey Island. From what we've seen, my guess is that either Guybrush is going to stow away on LeChuck's ship to leave Melee, or he's going to stow away on LeChuck's ship to get to Monkey, one or the other. And whichever one he isn't doing at that point, he will instead be on some kind of weird ship made of junk and stuff, possibly with Murray, by the looks of things. Maybe in some situation related to the pirate leaders and those fishermen with the foil hats on and stuff.
Yeah.
I think maybe he's going to use some crappy improvised ship to leave Melee, maybe, and I think maybe he's going to get lost on the way and end up at... I think Terror Island first, and I think Terror Island, we've seen nothing about it. I think it's just going to be that tiny little island we saw in the Stan trailer with the one tree on it.
Yeah, I think you might be right there. It's going to be a bit of a reversal of expectation. Oh, it's so horrible. Oh, it's actually this tiny little...
Yeah, I think it's going to get built up as this big thing, and when he gets there, there's just nothing there.
Yeah.
I think...
Or it's all been washed away or something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And if assuming he doesn't go there on LeChuck's ship, then I think he's going to go to Bermuda and end up on LeChuck's ship from there. And I still think something to do with the potion is going to happen. Guybrush fiddling around with the potion to get to Monkey Island. I think Bermuda is going to be a big part of the game.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the big middle of the game, is what I reckon.
Okay. What we've heard Ron kind of say is that he turns up on Melee Island and then he leaves. Like, Melee is kind of downplaying that stuff.
Yeah, I really hope so.
Oh, I kind of hope so too. So, yeah, I'm hoping you're right there, that these other locations are explored further.
Yeah. I think the thing with the guy with the keys, I just had a random thought, maybe it's to get a key to the monkey head.
Oh, yeah.
That's, but probably not. But it was just a thought.
I think we're definitely going to go into the monkey head.
Yeah, I think we are. I mean, we've seen screenshots of those tunnels, which look like they're almost definitely inside the monkey head.
Yeah, there might be more to it than we've seen from Secret. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think once Guybrush gets to Monkey Island, he's going to part ways with Murray at some point, and then they reunite. I think Murray's going to be in it a lot, as we've said before. I think Murray's probably going to be like Guybrush's sidekick, maybe, for part of it or something. I don't know, but I think
like he's Arthur in the Journeyman Project kind of thing.
Kind of, yeah. And I think when Guybrush gets to Monkey Island, you're going to get a bit of Herman, then you're going to go back inside the monkey head, and it's going to end. Guybrush discovers the secret and has his showdown with LeChuck.
Yeah, getting beaten from room to room.
Yeah, I did have one idea that because of the Captain Madison new pirate leaders element, I'm wondering, is this going to have some kind of it's a mad, 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 mad world kind of vibe with Guybrush, LeChuck, and Captain Madison all trying to find the secret of Monkey Island first or something like that. And maybe Elaine's even trying to stop all of them from doing it because she wants them to just leave the secret alone or leave Monkey Island alone or something like that. Maybe. I'm hoping I'm completely wrong about all this, by the way.
If it's tied that closely with LeChuck's revenge and all the big whoop stuff, like, Elaine kind of knows about it.
Yeah.
But doesn't mention it. Yeah, you may be right. That she's kind of trying to stop everyone from finding whatever they're looking for. Whatever the secret is.
Yeah, I think maybe her attitude's just going to be stop mucking around with all this stuff, just leave it alone.
Yeah.
And she's trying to preserve the sanctity of Monkey Island, is what I reckon.
Speaking of preserving the sanctity of Monkey Island, so there's not going to be any big broken down theme parks or anything, but I think that this is, despite what we've been told, this is Monkey Island 3A.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're going to get. And I think we're going to get we're going to have Murray and Elaine and Guybrush are married. And that's going to be pretty much the only reference to 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
And I think, this is effectively going to be 3A. This is going to be, and it's also effectively a sequel to LeChuck's Revenge that goes back to Melee Island, I reckon.
Yeah, I think the stuff about Curse doesn't go out of canon, here's the scrapbook, blah, blah, blah. I think that's just PR to not annoy fans of the later games.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree with you. I think that this is really just going to function as a sequel to the first two, or a follow-up to the first two, and yeah, it's just those two bits you mentioned are going to be the only things. And that scrapbook will be there to be like, this stuff happened, we guess, if you care about that.
Check out the further adventures of Guybrush Threepwood.
If you care about it, then yes, sure, imagine that these other things happen too, but it's not important to the story we're telling at all, is what I think is going to happen, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's right.
Did you have any other predictions?
I think that, I was thinking about the intro. We've heard that it starts at the carnival or whatever.
Yeah.
I just have this feeling that Guybrush is going to end up in a bumper car at some point. Whether it's a kind of vague reference or... I realise this kind of goes over what I just said, that we're not going to get much from Curse. But, maybe there'll be a bit of some sort of... like a splitting of the timelines or something.
Yeah, that's one possibility. I was also thinking maybe everything... we've kind of talked about this before, but maybe Curse, Escape, and Tales all happen in an abstract way.
Yeah, that too. Or they're all part of some experience that Guybrush has had while trapped in the carnival. And then he's kind of woken up from that. I also think that this game's going to deal with Guybrush being kind of passing some sort of new pirate exam, some new version of the 3 trials.
Having to prove himself again.
Yeah, and I wonder if kind of this scene we've seen with the new pirate leaders, whether that has something to do with the kind of literary romanticised version of pirates that we're presented with in the first few games compared with what pirates were actually like, which seems to be like what, say, Captain Madison is talking about.
So you think they're going to be more like real pirates?
Yeah, and I wonder if that's going to play into something to do with Guybrush waking up from whatever happened at the end of LeChuck's Revenge.
Yeah, I think that could be part of it. I think that doing new spins on stuff that happened in secret particularly is definitely going to be a part of it, so that could be an element,
Yeah, I'm worried that that's going to be too laboured, and we're going to get too bogged down into that continuity stuff. And I'm hoping that that's not the case.
Yeah, me too. But I'll probably talk about that a bit more if we sort of, when we move on to talking about what our thoughts and feelings are leading up to it.
Yeah.
I did notice that in some of the background info, but one thing I noticed, this is not very important, but it kind of relates to what you were saying before. They've gone back to, they're calling LeChuck a zombie pirate. And to me, again, that feels very much like none of the other games happened. It's just following on from Revenge.
Yeah.
So, and is it even going to be that the other games kind of happen in fast forward, or they happen in a kind of, they happen but they also don't happen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how it's going to be explained or if it's going to be explained. I think this is the whole big question mark hanging over the game, and it's probably overshadowing the other stuff that might actually be more interesting and actually kind of define this game more, because I want to check out the new environments.
Yeah.
And get involved in the new story.
Yeah, and there have been a lot of interviews where Ron said, I really wanted to start at the amusement park. It starts where LeChuck's Revenge ended. And I'm thinking, I wonder why it needs to. Well, why he wanted it. Why did he want it to? What was so important about following on from that ending? And I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
At risk of getting bogged down in a separate reference, this makes me think of the beginning of the 90s Doctor Who film. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So just to briefly recap, the previous Doctor from the late 80s, Sylvester McCoy, turns up at the beginning of that film, and because of what happens to Doctor Who, he regenerates into the new Doctor, Paul McGann. So we get introduced to a main character, and then that main character just disappears and turns into someone else.
Yeah.
And for Doctor Who fans, that's what you wanted to see. But for the sake of a narrative, it was a terrible idea.
Yeah, it doesn't achieve anything from a story or character perspective.
No, it was complete fan stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and what's worrying me is that's what worries me about the introduction of this game being starting in the carnival or whatever, unless it just means Guybrush starts in a carnival and it has nothing to do with anything from LeChuck's Revenge. It's just he's in a carnival, you know what I mean? And you can connect those things if you wish, or
not.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be unless this scrapbook feature is handled really well, it's going to be very confusing for people if he genuinely starts off as a little kid in an amusement park with his nasty brother and his parents and then turns back into a pirate.
Yeah, I think this scrapbook thing has thrown us a little bit.
Well, I don't know. I guess there's no point in me speculating about how this is going to work. We'll just have to wait and see. I am really curious.
Yeah, I'm curious as well. I don't really have any hard predictions about the plot, besides the stuff about probably Guybrush having to prove himself as this new kind of pirate, or there's kind of a new version of pirate out there that's different to the pirate that he's used to, kind of thing. Like the Monkey Island pirate.
Yeah, meaner, nastier, more vicious pirates, possibly, as opposed to the kind of the Disney pirate that you got in the first two games, or the
more real world pirate.
Yeah, it might be a more realistic take on them.
Yeah, but I also think, from what we've seen, this is going to be quite a light game, and we've discussed this, you and I.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of jokes. It's going to be a lot of fun. I don't think there's anything going to be too heavy. I don't think it's going to be like LeChuck's Revenge.
No, I don't think there are going to be any
sinister
shocking revelations or any kind of that cynicism about the gameplay experience or storytelling or escapism or anything like that, or the modern world, or however you want to interpret that ending. I don't get the impression there's going to be that. It seems to me like this game, especially based on stuff we've seen and what Ron and Dave have said in interviews, that this game is about being a bit older and having unfinished business, and possibly, I would guess, whether it's important to resolve your unfinished business, or what are the things that it really matters to get closure about, as opposed to what it doesn't matter, is something I would guess that it might talk about. And maybe the way the ending of Monkey Island 2 plays into it is maybe it's going to be a joke along the lines of people have been waiting 30 years to find out what happens after the ending of Monkey Island 2, and it's going to be some joke about it not being anything interesting or important, possibly. To make another TV reference, it'd be like how the 8th series of Red Dwarf ended on this silly cliffhanger, and then it was off the air for 10 years, and then years after that, when they made Series 10, they joked about how that cliffhanger was resolved, but they never actually told the audience what happened.
Yeah, that was handled perfectly, I thought. And the great thing about that Series 10, I think, which you and I quite like, is that they just didn't bother with that stuff.
Yeah, they didn't get bogged down in continuity. Yeah,
it was just 4 blokes on a spaceship, like it should be.
And they poked fun a little bit at the fans for caring so much about the plot of a comedy, and I'm wondering if this opening will do something similar, where it'll be something really inconsequential, and it will kind of poke fun at the idea that it was particularly important how Guybrush got out of the situation at the end of Monkey Island 2. Like who cares? He gets out of it somehow, which Curse kind of already did, but
Curse handled that well, I think, and that's the great thing about Curse, is it kind of dispensed with that stuff immediately. You can have your problems with the plot of Curse and the damsel in distress kind of plot, but it's its own thing. It's self-contained, right?
Yeah,
and that's kind of what I hope this is.
Yeah, and if we do sort of move on to talking about our hopes. Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see how it's done, because, like we've just talked about, one, Curse already followed up on the ending of LeChuck's Revenge. not in a great deal of detail, except it gave details about stuff that wasn't that important, like what was the amusement park or whatever, and it kind of ignored the parents and the brother and stuff, and how did he get out. It followed up on it directly. It did show that he escaped somehow, and he goes back there at the end. And
I mean the beginning of Curse is good. I don't mean that scene with a big discussion with LeChuck.
No, but regardless, it's been done.
Yeah, that's right.
and the other thing is, going back to Melee Island and going back to Monkey Island has been done. Escape already did it.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Like, I guess Curse already went back to Monkey Island as well, but it didn't feel as much like it because the amusement park doesn't feel like Secret Monkey Island, whereas Escape does. But that's the thing that I was talking to you about the other day. You know, Ron and Dave had nothing to do with Escape. Dave, I don't know, maybe has not even played it, and he certainly didn't when it came out. Ron did and said he didn't like it, but for us as people who've been playing these games for so long, going back to Melee Island and going back to Monkey Island has already been done.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's the thing that I'm most apprehensive about towards this game is I don't care about Melee Island or Monkey Island. I want to see new stuff, which was what you were saying before.
Yeah, and like to Tails' credit, there was no Melee, no Monkey. It was all new.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's, as you say, it's what we want to see. So if we're moving on to talking about kind of our emotions around this, especially just before it drops.
Yeah.
I am feeling a little nervous and a little cynical about it.
Yeah, me too.
I'm excited to see what it's like, and I kind of want to be proven wrong that it's going to be really great, but I'm worried. Not that it's not going to be good, and not that it's not going to be quality. I'm just worried that it's going to be too navel-gazing, too inward-looking.
Yeah, I feel like it might be a little bit too self-referential, which
that's what I mean. Yeah,
Curse and Escape both at times fell into the trap of doing.
Absolutely. This is going to have like a hell of a time beating out Curse, especially.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's because I was 10 when Curse was released and now I'm 35, but just like on quality alone, like it's going to have to be really good.
Yeah, it will have to be very, very imaginative and very funny and very pleasing, I guess, to beat Curse in a lot of ways. And not that it's a competition or something, but
no. But this Curse is what it's being compared to. Surely it is in my mind.
Yeah, and it feels like the idea of retreading these old environments again is more fresh to Ron and Dave than it is to us, because they don't have the attachment to Escape that we do. And that's the thing, is in my head, you're talking about comparing this to Curse, and in some ways I feel like I'm just going to end up comparing this to Escape, and that feels kind of silly because the popular wisdom is that Escape is the worst one in the series, which I don't agree with, but it does feel like all this stuff's been done before. And is what we get going to be so astonishingly original and such an interesting spin on it that it makes going back to Melee Island and Monkey Island worth doing rather than doing something brand new? And I kind of I don't like saying this because I want to have that faith that they are going to do something really interesting with it. Maybe I just think about these games too much and I've played them too many times.
But we do, right? We're fans of the series, and I think like we're kind of, if this is 3A, like we're kind of expecting, like if this is retconning out these 2 games or these 3 games or whatever, which we don't know it's necessarily doing, but if it's doing it to an extent, I really like Escape, and like it's going to have to be really good to outdo Escape.
Yeah.
Not that it's a competition, but as you say, like we've had these revisitations to these locations with time passing in the series, and it's going to have to be really original, as you say, in order to kind of be worth doing.
Yeah. It feels a bit like, you sent me that tweet of Ron's today where he talked about people will play this game in a couple of days and then this sort of 30 years of waiting will be over in an instant. And that's true, but at the same time, this isn't a game Ron Gilbert's been planning for 30 years. Like I joked about earlier, this is a game that he's been working on for 2 years. And he had a bunch of ideas for it 9 years ago, but a lot of those ideas ended up in Thimbleweed Park. where this isn't a hidden volume that's been kept from the public for decades. The true sequel that we were denied. This is Ron and Dave going, we've got a chance to work on this again. What do we do with it now? And that's fine. That's completely fine. Yeah. But it's not the idea that this is like the conclusion to the previously unfinished Monkey Island trilogy doesn't hold. And I think maybe for a long time, maybe since that I read that blog post in 2013, or maybe even before that, maybe I'd built up an unrealistic expectation in my head that if Ron ever came back to Monkey Island, he would make this game that was exactly what I would want it to be, which, as I've said before, would be like all the weirdest parts of Revenge would be the baseline kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. If you'd asked me a long time ago, I would have thought, yeah, Ron's going to make MI3, and it's going to look like Revenge, and it's going to have all those weird elements, and it's going to completely start at the Carnival or Big Whoop or with Guybrush Cursed or whatever, and sort all that out, and then it's going to be its tour de force from there.
Yeah. The long-awaited final piece of the puzzle kind of thing that always existed, and we just hadn't had a chance to see it before. Yeah, but that's not what it is, and it was never what it was going to be. And I think it's even though I said I shouldn't have expectations, or we should go in with no expectations, as we get closer, I think I have had these expectations the whole time, and they're just based on my own tastes and the game I've been imagining for years.
Yeah, which is why I think we're both sounding a little cautious towards our enthusiasm. But we want to be enthusiastic, because I'm sure it'll still be a great quality piece of work. And apparently they've had a great time working on it, and they're really proud of it. And it's going to be dense. There's going to be lots of detail and art and jokes and all of that stuff.
And puzzles as well.
Puzzles, yeah. It's going to be a huge game. I mean, they talked about how many lines of dialogue they recorded. More than Escape and Curse put together, I think. So a little cautious, perhaps, going in. I think possibly, if anyone's a long-term listener to us this year of this podcast, they might be a little disappointed with how downbeat we're sounding. And I think it might be a result of all the Monkey Island Mondays, do you think?
Yeah, because it's been a lot of remember Melee Island? Remember the Scumbar? Remember Wally? Remember the pirate leaders? It's like, yeah, I do. Show me something new. And maybe, as we said, Ron and Dave are saving this stuff to not spoil it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, because we're such big fans, and there are a few fans online who are... The Monkey Island kind of fan community is not that massive.
No, but the people who are active within it have incredibly detailed, obsessive knowledge of the games, like we do.
Yeah, and so seeing things like Melee Island, it's like, oh yeah, cool. But perhaps if you played Monkey Island, Secret of Monkey Island in the 90s, and you saw these things, and you'd say, oh wow, that's Monkey Island. I remember that. I remember the clock.
Yeah, exactly. If you hadn't, the
Scumbar.
Yeah, if you hadn't thought about Monkey Island for 30 years, you hadn't played any game since Secret or since Revenge or whatever.
Yeah,
it would be different. But again, I just wanted to say, remember when Escape came out?
I do.
And it was only 10 years after Secret.
Yeah.
And for us it was only 7 years after playing Secret, and we were like, oh my god, Melee Island, It was like, it's been a billion years since we saw this, and it's like, that was so...
Time also goes slower when you're a child.
When you're a kid, right? Yeah. But that's the thing, is maybe it's because, I don't know about you, but for me, I feel like I already ran through these emotions when I was 11 years old. Of going back to some of this stuff. And
but this is the thing. And this is the thing I found, maybe even just doing these recordings, is that the people that we've talked to online and stuff about this stuff, people have come into this series at all different times, right?
Yeah.
So we're kind of like, for better or worse, like OG kind of fans. Some people came to Curse, some people came to Tales.
Special edition as well.
Special edition. So like when you and I are like down on special edition, like to some people that's their Monkey Island,
Yeah.
And as two people in their like mid-30s, like this isn't going to have the same impact as Secret did when we were 7 or 8.
Yeah.
So we probably need to remember that, and we also need to remember that you need to kind of give sequels some opportunity to revel in their own selves a little, because it's almost, I think it's just human nature to want to be referential to your own stuff, as long as it can then therefore move on and be its own thing. Yeah I think LeChuck's Revenge being the prime example in this series of being such an amazing sequel, in that there are a few references to Secret, but it goes on and builds and becomes so much more than that. That's kind of like that's going to be hard to reproduce, is that level of quality for a sequel to a game.
Yeah, and when you talk about indulging a sequel, I guess we have to kind of indulge Ron and Dave as well, because it has been a long time for them, and because I guess we have been wanting them to come back and work on this series for so long.
Yeah.
There has to be a certain element of acknowledgement on our part, I maybe on my part or whatever, that they are treating this as something that is very personal to them, but they have a completely different relationship with the games than anyone who's a fan.
Absolutely.
They made these games.
Yeah, that's right.
And their experience of them and their attitude towards them, any mere player of them can never fully relate to that, and we have just have different expectations about, or different perspective on Monkey Island to what the two of them have.
If we look at the three examples, it's kind of like the original crew did the first two. The second two were kind of made by the spiritual successors to those guys. And then Tales was kind of made by fans, right?
Yeah, to a certain extent, yeah.
Yeah, which is why I feel like there's kind of three different tones there, and why perhaps I prefer Curse and Tales, because they're not necessarily... Like, they would be somewhat fans of the series, but there were also people who were around and somewhat involved in the originals, kind of their version of the thing. But when it comes to fans making their version of the thing, it's kind of always what they want to make. What did they get from Secret of Monkey Island and the Chuck's Revenge that they want to amplify in the new version? And I think by having the original creators come back around 30 years later, it's kind of another example again of a new author kind of coming back in.
Yeah, an author who's been away from a work for a very long time is almost has a completely different relationship.
Yeah,
again to the text. So
yeah, and as you and I talk about, like what we get out of Monkey Island, whatever it is that we discuss at length, is not what the person who got into Tales, or the person who got into Curse, or the person who got into Special Editions gets out of it necessarily.
Yeah.
So, and you can't please everyone.
No.
Also, what we're possibly doing is maybe we're subconsciously lowering our expectations in order to be pleased next week.
Yeah, it's quite possible that is what we're doing. And I am still looking forward to the game.
Absolutely.
I'm really looking forward to the stuff that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
The story elements, the locations, the characters that are unfamiliar.
I think what I'm anticipating the most is kind of that first moment.
Yeah.
What's going to be the first thing that we see when it boots up?
Yeah.
Not a bunch of logos or whatever, but is it when we first hear Dom's voice or whatever, or who knows?
Yeah, and as I said before, even though we kind of don't need to see it, I am really curious about how it's going to follow on from the ending of Revenge.
Yeah.
How is this opening going to work? Maybe it's all going to be all hype, I don't know, but I am really curious about it. And I think, about Guybrush getting a ship and a crew and stuff, I reckon I'm not going to be able to get off Melee Island fast enough and into the whatever the next part of the adventure is.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, do you think this is going to be the last one?
No,
neither do I.
It might be the last time that Ron works on it.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think this will be the last Monkey Island game ever made.
Monkey Island's an interesting series. It's like they're so spaced out, or at least they have been.
Yeah.
So it might be a year later, it might be 10 years, but I think there'll be another one no matter what.
Yeah, I think who knows who'd be working on it, or even if it'd still be a point-and-click adventure game, even, or whatever. But I think Monkey Island is one of those things that will continue to resurface from time to time whenever Lucasfilm thinks it's going to make them some money to do it.
Yeah. And in the meantime, you and I'll be there replaying the Chuck's Revenge and Curse and Escape and Secret. Once or twice a year.
And sometimes replaying Tales too.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll be replaying Return as well. I say all this stuff. I do plan on getting it on both PC and Switch. I do expect, unless I am so massively disappointed by this game that I can't stand the thought of replaying it, I intend to play it more than once, of course. And also, unless it's so profoundly emotionally moving that I can't bear the thought of going through the experience again. And we are going to. Our plan is that we are going to actually play at least as much of it as we can together, like we did when we were kids.
Yeah, we've got a day off together that we're going to on Tuesday when it's released. We're going to play.
Yeah,
And I'm looking forward to that too.
should be fun.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of comparing this to how I felt when Thimbleweed Park was released.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that was Ron coming back to adventure games after a long time, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and I really liked that, and I got heavily involved in that, and I remember you and I were playing it. We played it separately. We lived together at the time.
Yeah.
And I stayed up for hours, and then I went to bed, and I kind of couldn't stop thinking about it.
Yeah, it was, again, I think we've talked about this before, both didn't really like the ending of that game too much. Although I'm a bit leery about saying that now because I've read so many bad takes about why the ending was bad that now I'm like, yeah, okay, the ending wasn't that bad. Like,
the ending wasn't that bad.
You know when you have an opinion and then you share that opinion with someone stupid on the internet, and then you're like, maybe I don't actually think that.
But feel that strongly about it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I agree with Thimbleweed Park. That was. I didn't want to stop playing it. I was just completely hooked by the characters and the puzzles and the atmosphere of that game. And
yeah.
I'd love to have that feeling again. You know, I had that this year playing the point-and-click adventure game Cathy Rain, which is like a very heavily Twin Peaks inspired mystery game. And it wasn't.
Yeah, you told me about that.
It wasn't an amazing game or anything. But I kind of loved it, you know, and I got really into it.
You got involved.
I hope.
That's the beauty of good computer games. Right?
Yeah, good atmosphere.
It's all about the atmosphere.
Yeah, and
I guess like last I got that was The Last Door.
Yeah, Last Door, another incredibly atmospheric series of adventure games that I remember when only the first 3 of the 8 parts were out, and I was like, oh, when's part 4 gonna come out? You know, it was, and I ended up becoming a paid subscriber and stuff because I wanted to get the new episodes whenever they released, and I really loved those games as well. And
yeah, they were brilliant. You were like, you have to play this.
yeah, and I mean, I've had it with some other adventure games. Like, I know you didn't get super into it, but Don't Escape 4 Days to Survive or 4 Days in a Wasteland, whichever one it's ended up being called, because he had to change the name for some copyright reason. I loved that game.
You did, yeah. I found that that's stressful, but yeah.
And a few other point-and-click games that have come out over the last kind of 10 years, like a game called The Silent Age was another one, and some other interactive fiction narrative games, like I've talked before, alluded to my obsessive love of the first Life is Strange game as well, and the in the visual novel Coffee Talk as well. And these are all games where the atmosphere is so strong, right? And that's, I guess that's what and you know, like Secret and Revenge and Curse all have atmosphere up the arse, right? Right? Like we've talked about that before, and I guess I'm hoping for that atmosphere from Return as well.
Yeah, I think, and if I let myself, I do feel excited. I'm, sitting here looking at my big boxes of Curse and Escape and Tales, a Dial Pirate Wheel, and kind of thinking, this is kind of like, this is momentous.
Yeah.
This is the first time in how long there's going to be 6 Monkey Island games. I remember when there were only 2.
Yeah, and I really do hope Ron and Dave have just been cautious about spoilers, and they haven't been showing us. They've intentionally been showing us stuff we've seen before, so as to not show us stuff that's new.
Yeah, and to hype it up for people who aren't massive Uber fans.
Yeah,
which is fine. I don't really want it to be made for them.
Yeah, we've talked before. I don't want it to be made for fans, and so I hope it's something that it does feel fresh and original, even if it's got familiar locations and characters in it.
Yeah, and I think it will. And I think I know that once I'm there and I'm reading new Guybrush Threepwood dialogue written by Ron and Dave, I'm gonna be happy, basically.
Yes, I think so. And you're probably right that, I'm just being defensive in anticipation because I don't want to get my hopes too high and be disappointed.
Yeah. I feel like anyone who's clicking onto this video out of the blue is going to be thinking that we're going to be, chewing the walls in anticipation of this. And we're probably a little more downbeat than you'd expect. But yeah, I just want to keep my expectations level.
But we are going to be like kids on Christmas Eve the day before this comes out, right?
Yeah,
it's going to be like hard to sleep before this comes out.
Yeah, this is pretty huge.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm just worried for some reason.
It'll be okay. The game is going to be okay, I reckon.
Yeah, and it's going to add so much more to the series that I love.
Yes. So I think probably this is most likely going to be the last episode until after we finish the game, I would imagine.
Yeah, it depends how long we take to finish it, I think.
Yeah, unless we get really stuck and it takes us a long time, maybe we'll do a follow-up episode, which is a first impression / part way through check-in.
I was thinking of doing a first impressions video.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to talk about was spoilers. I'm not that fussed about spoilers. That's something I've come to in my adult life, where I've realised that just necessarily knowing one plot point shouldn't spoil the entire experience for me. So I'm not that fussed about that. But if you are, don't listen to a video that we put out that says these are all our thoughts about Return to Monkey Island. But I think maybe, depending on how long it takes us to finish it, maybe we'll finish it in 6 hours. I doubt it. But we might do a check-in, and then we might just do our overall thoughts. And then who knows? There's going to be a slew of new stuff to talk about.
Yeah. But we'll have spoiler warnings and stuff.
Yeah.
But I myself am absolutely going to be avoiding all media about
Monkey
the game while I'm playing it.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm, silencing groups, not going to pages, and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be weird getting out of the habit of going to Mix and Mojo every day, but yeah.
Gonna have to be that way for a little while.
We'll see.
All right.
Well, what's everyone's thoughts?
How are you feeling in the last few days?
Yeah.
Or if you're coming to this later, how did you feel in the lead up to the release of Return?
Yeah. And I apologise if we killed anyone's buzz.
Yeah, it's definitely not our intention to kill the buzz. We've just been sailing on tumultuous seas, I think, because clearly we take this series of comedy pirate games way too seriously.
Absolutely. And that's part of the fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so chuck your thoughts down below and your feelings and your emotions. And where you think it's going to go. And I guess Rubber Chicken with a podcast in the middle. We'll see you on the other side, guys.
When we'll all know the secret of Monkey Island.
Monkey Island, yeah. So good luck, everyone.
Godspeed.
Keep your sword as sharp as your wit.
Or we'll whack you with a rubber chicken.
Or a pelican, as the case may be.
Yeah, pelicans. It's the hour of the pelican.
All right. Thank you for listening to Rubber Chicken with a podcast in the middle, the internet's only podcast exclusively dedicated to endless discussion about the Monkey Island series. I've been Gordon.
I'm Alistair.
And for the last time before return to Monkey Island.
Look behind you! A three-headed monkey!
See you on the other side, Ray. Nice working with you, Dr. Venkman.